There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to another Friday Reads. I'm getting started at about 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and I was awake early. I thought I would read one more chapter first thing in the morning of each of the books that I started during the week so that I could have more to say about them. And I did that, and that went very well. Then I promptly fell back to sleep and didn't wake up until 1 p.m. So I have been struggling with, I don't know if it's insomnia. Is it insomnia when you wake up too early? I guess it is. So I've been waking up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. most mornings and not going back to sleep, and then trying to catch up on my sleep by napping during the day. Is this interesting? Are you all asleep? So yesterday and today I conked out for several hours, because usually my naps are about 20 or 30 minutes. But anyway, I am feeling fresh as a... I guess that's not a daisy. I'm feeling fresh and filming late. And I have two stories to tell you before I get started. One is bookish related in that I'm buddy reading this fantastic collection of short stories from India, No Presents Please, by Jayant Kaikini, translated from the Kannada language by Tejaswini Niranjana. This is a buddy read one story a week with Jyotsna of Jyotsna's Bookish Musings. And the story we read last week was actually our least favorite of the collection. It wasn't terrible, but the stories in this book have otherwise been outstanding. It was called Inside the Inner Room, and there was just a little bit too much going on, and it was just a little bit too wonky for me. But as in all the other stories, so many references to Indian food, and I'm Googling everything and learning so much about Indian culture and cuisine and films and history through reading this book. And there was one in particular in this story that I'd never heard of, and I Googled it and saw the recipe, and the recipe looked fairly easy that even I could make it. It's pav bhaji, which it's a masala. It's a vegetable dish. It's kind of like a stew. It's thicker than a dip. And then you eat it on toasted bread or toasted buns, toasted dinner rolls, but it's a Mumbai street food. There was an Indian grocery in Tokyo that would deliver, so I got pav bhaji masala spice, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this, kasuri methi powder, and a couple other spices I got delivered, and it's with cauliflower and green pepper and potato and peas. I think that was it for vegetables, mashed. And then with tomatoes and stuff. Here is the video of it cooking on the stove. Looking good. I was worried about... I like spice. Sometimes spicy foods don't agree with me, but I've always liked hot, spicy foods. Not extremely hot. I don't do well with those. But I was worried, and Kenji doesn't like spicy foods, and they don't agree with him, and in fact he can't handle the smell of a lot of spices. Like when I have made Indian food before and fried garlic in oil or something, it really stinks up the house, and a lot of the Indian dishes have a very strong aroma. There's a lot on the internet about how to remove curry smell from your apartment. So I was a little bit nervous cooking it. He was at work. He got home late, and so I opened the patio door. I opened the windows, and I always forget to turn the overhead fan on the stove on. So I didn't do that. But anyway, cooked it. It was delicious, and it was the kind of spice that I love because you can feel that it has quite a bite to it, but within 45 seconds, it's not burning your tongue. It's not burning your throat. I like that kind of spice. Kenji came home. He thought the smell in the apartment was quite pleasant, and he'd had one bite of mine and said he liked it a lot. He loved it, so he's going to eat the rest of it with me tonight when he comes home from work. So that was a big success, so that made me very happy. I think it would also be good on rice or anything, and Jyotsna was very excited to hear that I was making it. The other good news that I have is Kenji and I aren't getting divorced. If we ever got divorced, probably number one on my list of grievances would be his hairdryer. I don't need a hairdryer, and he can't leave the house without hair drying. Blow drying his hair for it seems like 40 minutes. He does it in installments. blow dries his hair, and then he goes and have a cup of coffee, and blow dries it some more, and goes out, has a cigarette, and it's so noisy that the bathroom is down the hall, and I just shut the hall door, and even then I can hear it. So his hairdryer died, and he promptly ordered another one online, and so I was teasing him that I wasn't going to let it in the house. No more hairdryers, for God's sakes. It arrived yesterday, he used it this morning, and it's so quiet. Yes, it saved our marriage. Those are my 2 pieces of good news, and now let's get on to the books. No bails, and I have finished 2. One I'm going to review for sure, the other one I'm undecided about. I'll start with the one I am going to review. This Korean novel, Trees on a Slope by Hwang Sunwån, translated from the Korean by Bruce and Juchan Fulton. This was a buddy read, my first ever buddy read, with Roz of Scallydandling About the Books, and that was excellent. This book just gutted me. This was a 5-star read. I do think I know what I want to say about it, and I'll probably film the review in the next, maybe later today or soon, and don't know when I'll post it, but it's set at the very end of the Korean War. There's 3 main soldiers, and it follows what happens to them right after the armistice, and for a couple of them into the next few years, and it is dark and tragic and violent. Hwang writes character with such a light touch and takes me deep into the characters. I couldn't read it very much in one sitting. I went 3 or 4 days past the end of our buddy read because I couldn't read more than a chapter or 2 a day. It was extremely intense and heartbreaking, and with some, I think, quite profound things to say about war, yes, but even more so, misogyny. Stay tuned for my review. And although I haven't done my final check-in on this buddy read with Lindy, yesterday I did finish Towards a Prairie Atonement by Trevor Herriot. And this is a lengthy environmental/indigenous studies polemical essay, that I thought was just incredible. And this was also a 5-star read. I haven't decided if I'm going to review it. I'm going to check in with Lindy. I think she and I will have lots to talk about. Trevor Herriot is a settler, i.e. white, Saskatchewanian environmentalist and writer, and he has written several books about the prairies and the natural world. My mom is a big fan of his books. I have never read them. I've never been interested in reading this kind of... thanks to Heidi and Doris, especially with their Naturalist Book Club, I've started to get into it, and I read this, in fact, for Springathon this year. Didn't finish it before Springathon was over, but that's what prompted me to read it now. And he talks about something that I had never in my life thought about, and that is how threatened the prairie grasslands are and how they're disappearing, and part of that is because of the way that we have farmed the land. He explains it all, and he writes so beautifully, and made me think about that part of the environment in which I grew up in a completely new way. And then he links it very much with the fact that we murderous, stupid settlers kicked the indigenous peoples, including the Métis peoples, off their land in the cruelest ways possible. And they had been really taking care of all of that. And we lost a chance to learn from them and together kind of make lives for ourselves alongside and in partnership with them, and we would have had a much better environment. I think we should give it all back and let them show us how to do it. This was really beautiful. It was moving. I can't believe how moving it was. Gorgeous writing. And Heidi of My Reading Life and I are buddy reading this Métis history. The Northwest is Our Mother by Jean Teillet. And spoiler alert, we're about just over a quarter of the way into it, and I'm learning lots, but it's not very well done, I have to say, and it's confusing. It's not, the information is not presented in a way that's clear enough where we keep getting lost, Heidi and I. We're going to keep going, I think we will, but Trevor Herriot covers some of that same ground and writes about one historical personage, one of the Métis leaders in the 19th century, whose name was Cuthbert Grant, and he played such an important role in most everything that happened in the relations between the Métis people and the settlers during his lifetime. And Trevor Herriot explains it from a indigenous-centric point of view. He's a settler writer, but he explains it from an indigenous-centric point of view far more clearly than in the other book, unfortunately. So I actually sent Heidi these 3 pages about him, and she agreed with me. Like, good Lord, we learned more about this guy and what the significance of his life was in the short summary here than we got from more than 100 pages of the big Métis book. So, that's too bad that the other book is such a dog's breakfast, but I think we'll keep reading it. This was a delight, a challenging read. If you're interested in environmentalism, if you come from Canada, especially the Canadian West, I think this would be a book that you would get a lot out of. This was published, I think, in 2016. Yes. It's profound, poetic, and is the kind of book that fires you up. I have started 5, and the first one I'll talk about is the ebook, so I don't forget it. And that is the Romanian novel by Duiliu Zamfirescu. It's I think a trilogy. It's certainly a series, and the first volume, the first novel in the series, is Love in the Countryside. The translators are Lucy Bing and Alan Stroh. I'm enjoying it. I think I found the publication date. It was the late 1890s, I believe. It has the feeling of a novel even earlier than that. It's about a boyar family, the old aristocracy in Russia, the boyars. So it's a boyar family in Romania, and their next door neighbors who are lower class but have more money now. So it's that thing, which is a common theme of 19th century literature, right? Big family. There are cute moments between the family members that I'm enjoying already. Teasing and whatnot that's really hard to do and show in translation, so I think the translation is really good. There are some more emotional kind of Dickensian sappy stuff that isn't working so much for me, but that's okay. I'm not far enough in to know any more than that, but it's starting out good. It is an ebook and a translation that has no introduction, no footnotes, no anything, and which I think is a failing, because I don't know anything. I can't find very much information about, other than what's on the author's Wikipedia page. I'm curious about certain things, but it's going well. This is a buddy read, and I have about 100 more pages to read before I check in this weekend with my buddy reader, Freddie of Sluggish Reader. But I have read the first 50 pages, and this is the one I'm most excited about, actually. This is a Indonesian novel, Not a Virgin, by Nuril Basri, translated by John H. McGlynn. When I first got started, I thought, the writing is nothing special. And that's true. It's very workmanlike, doesn't draw attention to itself, doesn't roll trippingly off the tongue, but the story is really interesting. So it's about he's about 18 or 19-year-old Indonesian boy of undetermined sexuality. I will find out by the end, presumably, whether he's gay or straight or bi or questioning what he is, but he feels like his family doesn't have room for him, doesn't want him anymore, and he doesn't have a very good relationship with his dad anyway, so he decides to put himself into a Islamic boarding school called Pesantren. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Pesantrens. An Islamic boarding school in Indonesia. It was a Pesantren, and you could stay there for really cheap, and you got religious instruction, and then you just boarded there and went to your normal school. In his very first few days and weeks living there, he, by a freakish set of circumstances, ends up meeting a very effeminate, presumably gay, hairdresser who's one of his classmates at his high school, but he didn't know him. He's the rich kid at school, but he's incredibly flaming, openly, so obviously gay, and he works as a hairdresser just down the street from the Islamic boarding school, the Pesantren. And they struck up a friendship, and I don't know where it's going, but it's really holding my interest. It's sketching a world that I knew nothing about, and the gay characters use gay speech, which in Indonesia is known as gay speak or queen speech, or sometimes Salonese, or in the Indonesian language, bahasa gay. So that's interesting, and there's an essay, maybe even 2 little essays at the back about the language used. So no, it's fascinating. I'm looking forward to reading up to the halfway point and comparing notes with Freddie later in the weekend. Bertram Cope's Year by Henry Blake Fuller. This is a 1919 gay novel from America, and I'm not sure about it yet. The writing is good. The story's holding my interest, but I'm maybe a little bit worried that it's going to be one of those books where not liking any of the characters is going to be a drawback. That isn't always. In fact, I would say it's not often a drawback, but I'm having quite a strong reaction to the protagonist, this hot young college instructor, and everybody in this small university town is it in Illinois? The Middle Western University town is patterned on Evanston, Illinois, and everybody and their dog wants to get a piece of him. And I don't know if he's going to turn out to be gay, but there's a kind of academic wannabe older man that's got his eyes on him, and there's this really irritating, annoying, I think she's a professor's widow. She's a widow. The quote-unquote repartee between her and this young guy, it's just so off-putting. I don't know if I can deal with it. Like, it's not witty to read. It's just annoying. I don't know. We'll see. It's not bad. It's just weird and a little bit annoying. The characters are annoying me, so maybe it's working. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to be feeling. And this Welsh novel, which I believe is from 1929, The Withered Root by Rhys Davies. It's good. You know what's weird about this? And it's just a culture shock. But it's also a bit of a shock because I've read quite a bit of Welsh literature, including from around the same period, that I don't remember doing this. But I didn't know until today, and I Googled it, that Welsh has a different syntax. And the verb always comes last, which apparently is different from a lot of the other, or all of the other Celtic languages. But I don't remember it ever being rendered that way in English. Like, this novel, The Withered Root, it's written in English, but the characters are speaking Welsh. And so he's writing it in that syntax. So many of the sentences are like this. Methodist I am. Oh, live and burn farm you do. Sorry I am if I've disturbed you. Oh, dear me, dropped off to sleep I did. It's a little bit annoying, but once I realized, it's replicating that syntax in Welsh, I'm okay with it, but maybe annoying's too strong, but it's like, I've read so much, I've probably read more Welsh literature than anybody else who's not Welsh on BookTube, and I don't remember ever encountering it. So I guess a lot of writers didn't bother doing it, and translations from the Welsh language didn't do it. It's okay. I think it'll be okay. This is a story about a really unhappy family, and that's a Welsh trope. There's a word that I always hated, and I think it was Lindy that talked me down and said I should just get over myself and start using it. Unhappy families, and the two big problems in the family are overzealous religion and alcoholism. Those are also very big themes in Welsh literature. It's interesting. I don't know if I'm going to love it, but I'm interested in what I'm reading. That's all I have to say so far. And finally, this one is probably the best in terms of as a literary novel. This one is probably the one that stands out as being the most impressive. And this is from China, Rickshaw Boy by Lao She, translated from the Chinese by Howard Goldblatt. And it's good. So it's about a rickshaw boy. He's an orphan. When he becomes 17 or 18, he moves to the big city, Beijing, starts working as a rickshaw boy to save money to buy his own, because that's where the money is. Once you have your own, then that's you're not paying rent to somebody else for the rickshaw. You start to make money. So he is very industrious, and he is a strapping young lad. He sounds really hot to me. And he encounters it's set in the 1920s, so that was a time of a lot of internal strife, if not civil war. The communists were getting stronger, and it was the dying days of the old regime, and there was all kinds of armed conflict and danger, and he is in the middle of all of that. He's a very likable protagonist. The one thing that I will say is I don't do well with fiction where it's one character who doesn't have any or not very much interaction with other characters, and I'm worried. So far, that's what this is, but setting up the story, it's okay, but I'm worried he's going to be a loner his whole life, and my attention starts to wander. I need human interaction in my fiction. Not that I'm going to bail because of that, but it will decrease my enjoyment. The writing / translation is excellent. Well, it wouldn't be a Friday Reads if I remembered to include everything on the first go around. So here I am with a late edition. I forgot to tell you that I've also started an audiobook. And this is my very first audiobook that I'm doing from LibriVox, which is where amateur audio narrators just record public domain stuff and put it on the website. And I have always kind of poo-pooed that because, the quality of the audio narration is very important to me. But on a whim, I decided to try one, and it's going well. That is Wilkie Collins' novel, The Woman in White, from about 1859, 1860. And I know those of you that know me well are wondering why I chose a Wilkie Collins novel, and especially The Woman in White, because it apparently, I just found out from looking at the Wikipedia article, is considered one of the first mystery novels, which I don't get along with mystery novels. Had I known that, I might have chosen something different, but I've never been that drawn to try Wilkie Collins. I studied one of his novels as an undergrad, and it was one of his lesser-known ones. Armadale. Armadale was a big, thick novel, and I remember that I wrote what everybody said. My prof, my fellow student said was an excellent undergrad paper about identity and how identity was linked to documents in that novel. Wilkie Collins' fiction is very sensationalistic and kind of melodramatic and so on. It's not my bag, but what the hell. I'm trying The Woman in White, and it's going fine. Certainly the audio narration is amateur, but this British man has a very nice voice, and I'm enjoying it. So it's free, and it's in progress. That is what I have. I am not planning to start anything new in the coming week. You may have seen my Pride TBR. I'll be starting those books plus the Invisible Cities books for June the week after. So by my next Friday Reads, I hope to have a whole bunch of other books that I have finished to tell you all about. Thanks for watching.